Greetings and salutations, guys. Jake Vegas here with Jake Vegas Digital, and today we're not gonna do some fishing. What this video is going to demonstrate, or at least educate on, is how to get started in Fishing Planet. If you're new to the game, if you're a beginner, this video should help you out immensely on what fish to fish for, what equipment to buy, and things of that nature, what lures to get when you're starting out, so you can get on the track to go into some other unique lakes out here and trying to catch, some of the different bigger fish that are out there in this game. So with that said, there's not going to be much actual fishing video footage in this particular video, but it's going to be more of a guide. Pretty much what I'd like to think of it as the ultimate beginner's guide to getting started in Fishing Planet. So let's go ahead and do that. Recently, I found myself in a predicament where I was at the Everglades down here in Florida. Did not have an advanced license, or my advanced license expired, and I did not buy a new one. Didn't buy in a basic license either. Accidentally caught a fish, and without realizing that I didn't have the license, again, I got fined $10,000, guys. So that put me actually in the negative. I was negative about $2,300, and that kind of put me in a damper. Found myself back at Lone Star Lake. I actually came over here. You'll see the advanced licenses here. I actually came over here and had to buy with gold because I did not have any cash. I had to buy an unlimited license so I could catch the spotted bass and make money here in Lone Star. So let's get started. With all that said, I'm pretty much back to newbie level now. So there's a few things you need to know when you get started in Fishing Planet. The first thing is that your money is very important. You guys will start off up here with your cash. I believe it's about $16,000 you will start off with. Now, you may be tempted to go right away and say, hey, that's a lot of money. I'm going to buy all this equipment. Don't do that, guys. You do not want to do that. You want to hold on to your money. Use your money sparingly, especially in the beginning stages when you're getting to know what you're doing. Don't just spend it frivolously. Hold on to it, guys. Hold on to it. The lake you're going to start off on here is Lone Star Lake, and it's in Texas. And the first thing you're going to want to do, this is one of the most important tips when you're on Texas. When you're on any lake, actually, the first thing you want to do is get the advanced license. The basic fishing license, yeah, you can get it, but really on this lake and any other lake, this basic license really isn't all that worth it, because the money-making fish, the fish that are actually going to earn you money, are usually restricted to you having an advanced license to catch them and keep them. You don't keep money if you release your fish. You'll keep your XP, but if you catch a fish and you release it back, you're not going to get the money for it. You have to have it either in your keep net or on your stringer to get the actual money for it. So remember that. First things first, any lake you go to, always buy the advanced license for it. And that way, when you catch the bigger fish that are restricted, like these here, for example, on Texas, with the advanced license, you'll be able to keep them without getting fined. And yeah, so keep that in mind, because that's the way you're going to make money. And making money is the most important thing in this game, because it's the only way you're going to be able to travel to other locations to catch the bigger, cooler, more fun, higher paying and higher XP fish. So with that said, always have a license in general. Make sure you don't go fishing without a license, or else you'll end up in the predicament that I found myself in, and you'll get fined. Depending on the lake, I believe the fines vary, but I was down here in the Everglades and I got fined $10,000, guys. So it takes a big chunk out, and it got me to the point to where I was in the negative. Being at level 37 now, I found myself all the way back to Lone Star, the beginner lake, and farming the fish there to start building my bankroll back up again. So here we go. Another thing, when you start off the game, I get this question a lot, or I see it a lot in chat anyway. When you start fishing Lone Star Lake, your rod is initially going to be in a flip sort of motion. It's going to be like an overhand kind of flip of the lure or the bait out into the lake there, and you don't get very much casting distance. Now, you're going to want to switch that to long casting. And it's real simple on PC. I'm not sure what it is on Xbox or not. I'm sorry, not Xbox, PlayStation. Not sure what the button is on PlayStation, but the first thing you're going to want to do is hit your F11 key if you are a PC gamer. When you have your rod out, that will switch you from the flipping motion short casting animation and mechanic. It'll switch it over to the long casting, which will allow you to get much greater distance on your casts. F11 will get you to regular long casting mode. So remember that when you got your rod out, hit that button, and that will get your rod to a position where you could long cast it. Now, moving on, you're going to start off at Lone Star Lake, and the first type of fish that you're probably going to catch are bluegills, common shiners, and red ear sunfish, maybe some crappie. Those are all panfish type fish, and they don't yield you much money due to the fact that they're so small, but they're not that high paying. You have to catch quite a bit of them, those panfish, those little panfish, in order to build up any kind of bankroll. And I can understand when you're new to the game, that could probably be rather frustrating, but don't let that frustrate you guys. Keep in mind that when you start off on Lone Star, there is a great way to earn money there, and that is by catching the spotted bass that are on that lake. Not going to get into how to catch the spotted bass, but I'm going to go ahead and let you know that they are in there. I do have a video on how to catch the fish, all kinds of fish on Lone Star Lake. Actually, I got a couple, I think 4 or 5 videos for Lone Star on my channel. If you want to know how to catch a specific fish on Lone Star, you can check those out. So, pardon me, starting off on Lone Star Lake, you're going to need a rod and reel setup. So this is going to be kind of a basic guide here to rod, reels, and lures. So let's go ahead and go to the shop, and we'll first take a look at our rods and see what we got here. Now, when you start off, I can't remember which particular rod you start off with. I believe it might be this Telefloat or maybe a step below it. But at a level 1 for $1,300, you'll be able to catch. You'll be able to select the Telefloat or buy it. So let's go over what this information on the rods and reels mean here. Now, the first rod you can unlock at a level 1 here is this Flagman Telefloat 14-foot 9-inch rod. So what does that mean? What does this information mean? The length of the rod, the line weight, the action, yada, yada, yada. Let's get into what it means. So when you're selecting a rod, now I'm going to use this basic one as an example. When you are selecting a rod, you have to keep some things in mind. The longer the rod is, most likely the farther you're going to be able to cast with it. So with this 14-foot 9-inch rod, you might be able to get some fairly decent casting action on it, distance. Maybe not that much due to the action on it, but you want to pay attention to your line weight. So the line weight for this particular rod is 2 to 4 pound, 2 to 4 pound test line. Now, that's real light line, meaning that you're not going to be able to catch fish that are much larger than 4 pounds. With this rod. You can put line that is heavier, like 6 pound test on it, but then you run risk of damaging your rod for having such a high line weight. So you want to select a rod, you want to select your equipment going for the type of fish that you plan on catching. So let me put it to you this way. You want to look on the lake that you're fishing, see what the size of the fish are that you're trying to go for. Like if you're trying to go for spotted bass on Lone Star Lake, the biggest those guys get is usually about 2 pounds. So you should be okay if you wanted to float fish them with a 2 to 4 pound rig. Now keep in mind that it's not, the fish weight does not correlate directly to the pound test of the line. The pound test of the line there's some factors to include is when a 2-pound fish hits your line and starts running with it, the bait, and starts fighting you, it's going to exert more pounds of resistance than 4 pounds. So if you're fishing for like 2-pound spotted bass, you'd probably want about 6-pound line on there. I'll get into that later. Getting off topic here, but the Flagman Telefoot first cast or match rod, telescopic rod, I'm sorry, that you unlock 2 to 4 pounds. So let's see what kind of reel would you get for that. Let's go to our reels here. Now, these are the first reels. The first one that you unlock is the mini spin here, and that can handle, this has a capacity of 2-pound mono all the way up to 4-pound braid. So this reel would probably be the perfect fit for the Flagman rod that we just looked at. So you want to keep that in mind. When you have a capacity on your reel, you want to look at the max capacity, which in this case is 4-pound line. I believe at 80 feet or 80 yards. I'm not sure. I think it's 80 yards, 4-pound line. So you don't want to put line any heavier than 4 pound on this particular reel. Now let's move on to something that's a very touchy subject. A lot of people disagree or agree. There's arguments about this, even in real life fishing on different boards, but it's your max drag. You want to pay attention when you're buying a reel. The two things that you mainly want to pay attention to are its capacity and its max drag. So max drag is pretty much when you get a fish on the line and the fish is fighting you, like I was saying earlier, it's going to exert more resistance than its actual weight. So if you get a 1-pound fish on, it might exert something like 2 to 3 pounds of resistance, and that converts to pounds. So if you're fishing for 1 pound or 2-pound bass, a max drag of 2.75 pounds, that's going to be a little bit too, it's not going to be really good to pull in a fish of that size, because they may exert about 4 to 6, maybe even a little bit more pounds of resistance. So this particular reel and the rod with 2.75 pound max drag would probably be more suited for smaller panfish, things that are under a pound, fish that are under a pound, fish that might maybe get up to 1.5 pounds. But I wouldn't use this reel and the Flagman rod that we just looked at for anything higher than that. So max drag. Now, there's also arguments. People will say things like, oh, because you're going to get damage to your equipment the more you fish, the more the durability is going to decrease, and you're going to have to repair your equipment. So you want to pay attention to these two factors here and purchase the proper line to put on the reel. Another factor to think about here is when you put your first rod and reel setup together, your line should be the weakest link, meaning that you don't want to have too heavy of line on a reel, or too heavy of a line on a reel, because that could or too heavy of a line for a rod, because both those factors, if you have too heavy a line on the reel, it could damage the reel. If you have too heavy a line for a rod, it could damage the rod, and it's going to cost more to repair your equipment. So you want your line to be the weakest link in your chain of equipment. You want to make sure that your rods and reels take as little damage as possible. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you put the right size line on your reel. And again, go by the figures for the reel here. Max line weight of 2, or max line weight of 4, minimum of 2. You can always go below the minimum, but there's no line test that's smaller than 2 pounds. So, and your max drag for the fish, the size of the fish that you're trying to catch. Let's go back to our rod again. So this is the Telefloat. The line weight, 2 to 4 pound. You would not want to put 6 pound on this, just like you wouldn't want to put 6 pound on the reel, because you're going to run a risk of damaging the rod or reel in the long run, which is going to result in higher repair costs. So let's bump it up a little bit more. You're going fishing. You're on Lone Star Lake. you've been using these rods and reels that are good for fishing the panfish, and you're gonna have to start off mainly fishing panfish until you can get equipment that'll handle bass. But let's take a look at what the first spinning reel or spinning rod is that we unlock. So the first one that you unlock is the 6-foot 3-inch value spin at level 3, and you can kind of see it goes up from there. Now keep in mind the value spin is it's decent. I mean, if you really want to get into spinning when you're level 3, you don't want to wait till you're level 4 or 5 to get a spinning rod, then yeah, you can get the value spin. I would suggest holding off till probably about level 5 before you actually invest in a spinning reel or a spinning setup, spinning rod and reel. But if you're aching to get into it, you can get into value spin. But let's go ahead and go bump it up to the value spin 7-foot 6-inch, which you unlock at level 5. Let's take a look at some of its specs. Now it's 7 feet and 6 inches. So that's a decent little starting off spinning rod. And with the longer length of the pole, you're going to be able to cast lures farther. Now, here's a new factor that we have to include, which is on a spinning and casting rods, you're going to have lure weight. This is the optimal size of the lure that you can fish with this rod. So it starts off, you can fish lures as little as a 1/4 ounce and all the way up to 5/7 of an ounce. So keep that in mind. This is the range for your lure, for what lure to use, what lures will work the best with this rod. So you want to know what kind of lures you're going to be using before you buy your rod, what size they are and whatnot before you buy your rod. Again, this one has a line weight of 3 to 7.5 pounds, which isn't bad, especially when you're starting off on Lone Star Lake. That is probably the best spinning rod that you can get without having to wait to bump up to levels. It's got 3 to 7.5 pound test, which is perfect for catching the spotted bass out there, which is the fish that you're going to want to catch to make money. Now, I had this rod, I remember, and I put about 6 pound test line on there. And I used that for a long time with, I can't remember which reel offhand, but I used it for a long time, catching the spotted bass, starting off in Texas, and just worked out real well. So keep that in mind there. Now let's go ahead and see what kind of reel we would get for this particular rod. Now, we've got spinning reels here. What could we put on that with a 3 to 7.5 pound test max on that rod? Let's see what kind of reel we can get to fit it most appropriately. Let's take a look here at this Callisto. Now this Callisto only goes up to 4 pound. I would not recommend this reel just by looking at its specs. I would not recommend it. Let's go ahead and look at our mini spin. Only goes up to 4 pound. We kind of want something that'll at least hold at least 6 pound test for the rod that we were just looking at. Let's go ahead and look at the Inspire Cast. And here we go. Now we're getting into some decent rods or reels here that can handle more line weight, which will allow you to effectively catch the bigger fish. So this Inspire Cast has a minimum capacity of 4 and a maximum capacity of 10 pound braid. Now this is going to be the perfect, one of the perfect reels that we can use for that rod. But keep in mind that although this reel holds up to 10 pound test braid, the rod that we chose only holds up to 7.5, can handle up to 7.5. So you want to have at the most, if you were to combine the rod and the reel that we're looking at here, you would want at the most 7.5 pound test on this particular reel, because the rod can't handle anything heavier than that. And we got a max drag here at 3.5. Now let's touch again on max drag, because that is a very controversial subject in the Fishing Planet world. What max drag is, that is the most amount of weight pretty much that you can set your drag to on your reel, resistance wise, to reel and fish. So that if you have your drag set all the way up, then 3.5 pound when it starts when a fish starts fighting at 3.5 pounds worth of resistance, that is when the drag on your reel is going to start making that clicking noise. Click, 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 click. You guys know what I'm talking about. If you have your drag setting all the way high. So how do you know what kind of line or whatnot you should put? Now, on a reel, you never want to exceed 10 pound. You never want to exceed the reel's max capacity. With the max drag, though, there's guys who are going to be out there and they're going to tell you, oh, you got a reel and it's only got a max drag of 3.5 pounds. You don't want to put anything heavier than 3.5 pounds on it. Well, that is incorrect. I hate to tell you guys that is incorrect information. The general rule of thumb in fishing, and now keep in mind, I am a real life angler. I worked in the fishing department for about 2.5, 3 years. Earlier in my youth, I've been fishing all my life. That is incorrect information. The 3.5 pound drag, you always want to look at it in thirds, right? So if the reel can handle 3.5 pound max drag, then the line should be about anywhere from 2 to 3 times that. So if we got a 3.5 pound max drag, we can handle line that is 7 pound. In fact, we can handle line with that max drag all the way up to about, let's see, 3 times 5 is 15, 3, 6, 7, or 9, 10, about 10.5. And as you can see, it correlates perfectly with the max capacity of this particular reel. So if the reel has a 3.5 pound drag, you can fish about 10 pound line with the 3.5 pound drag max, and your reel will be okay, and you'll be able to pull in whatever size fish without really having to worry about damaging your reel. Keep that in mind. Max drag is real important as well as the capacity. For those naysayers out there who say you don't want to have line higher than the max drag on the reel, just to give you an idea of how that's incorrect, look at the minimum capacity for this is 4 pound, yet the max drag is only 3.5 pound. It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to have lighter line, lighter than what the minimum capacity is for the reels. So always in thirds, 3 times, 2 to 3 times what your max drag is. That's usually about that'll give you about the highest pound test line that you could usually use with a reel. All right, moving on. I hope you guys get a basic idea of the rod and reel setups now. Things to keep in mind, basics here. Let's go ahead and go over the rods real quick. Spinning rods are for casting lures. Telescopic rods are for float fishing. Match rods are for float fishing. Now, it's important to note that all 3 of these rods here, they all require spinning reels. So the only rods that require a bait caster or just a casting reel is the casting rods. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing telescopic and match rods. You will be putting spinning reels on them, not casting reels. Now let's move on to line for a little bit here. Now, I am in the United States, and we usually gauge our line weight by what's called 2 pound test. I know guys who use the metric system go by millimeters and everything like that. I'm gonna talk about line in terms of test strength. So as you can see here, the very bottom level line, 2 pound test. Yeah, that's how I'm going to use it. Where it says test 2 pounds, that means how strong the line is. So basically, a general rule of thumb is that for panfish, you generally don't want to go over 4, maybe even 6 pounds tops. But when you're fishing for panfish, that's bluegill, that's crappie, that's perch. I think perch are panfish. I consider panfish. That's the red ear sunfish. That is the warmouths. That's all of those type of fish, the little guys, those are considered panfish. Usually about 4-pound test is good enough for those guys. So let's talk about the different types of line, like mono as opposed to fluoro as opposed to braid. Here's what to think about. Mono is your standard middle of the line. Monofilament is your standard middle of the line type of line. It is durable. It still can be somewhat visible in the water. So keep that in mind, but it's your go-to. It's the basic. It's what guys have been fishing with for years. Okay, now let's move on to fluoro. Fluoro can be considered like the fancy monofilament almost. It is nearly invisible in the water though. So fluoro line is going to be much less detectable by fish because it is such low visibility. It's practically invisible in the water. And just to keep that in mind when you're fishing, if you want to, in order to increase your chances of getting a fish, maybe fishing fluoro line might be your trick because it's much less visible in the water to fish than monofilament or braid is. With that said, let's move on to braid. Here we have braided line at a 4-pound test. Now, why braided line? You got monofilament, you got fluoro. Why do you need braided line for? Braided line is like the toughest of line. So braided line is generally good for areas where there are a lot of weeds, where there are a lot of snags, things like that. If you're casting a lure out there and you're noticing that you're getting caught in a lot of snags, or that you're fishing for fish that are dragging you out to areas where there's weeds or branches or trees or whatever, braided line is going to be best for those type of situations. It's the toughest, most durable. It's much stronger than monofilament or fluoro line, and that is the reason why you would want braid. So break it down. Mono is pretty much the standard. You can fish for any fish. Fluoro is to decrease the visibility of the line in the water, which may entice a fish to hit a lure that normally wouldn't hit one that spots the mono line. And the braid line is for durability. Now, when you look at a reel, that is why braid line is a little bit thicker. It's a little bit more abrasive. And that is why when you look at a reel, its specs, that's why you see the max capacity always set to how much the reel can hold in braided line. All right, let's see what else do you need to know here. The most important part of Fishing Planet, if you want to continue to go through and make money going to different lakes, this is very important, guys. It is your keep net or your stringer. This is going to be the deciding factor when you go to different locations, how much money you can make while you're at that location. Let's take a look here. So here we go. You start off with this little Fish Hut extra small, total fish weight 4.4 pounds. Now that is nothing. That is nothing. You do not, you want to upgrade your fish net and fish keeper as soon as possible if you plan on leaving Lone Star Lake. Now, here's the thing about Lone Star. When you're starting off, you do not have to pay any money to fish there, or for travel expenses, I should say. You got to buy the license, the advanced license, but you don't have to pay any money to fish there, and that's a good thing. So you don't really necessarily need to have too big of a fish net or a stringer when you're fishing on Lone Star, because you could always leave, empty your stringer, and come back. Leave and come back, leave and come back, leave and come back. You don't have to pay travel fees. But when you start going to other lakes, like you'll notice you'll unlock Mudwater River. You notice you'll unlock Emerald Lake. Those are the first 2 lakes that you unlock after Lone Star. You're going to want to have a good sized keep net with you. The keep net determines how much weight in fish you can keep. And then you can sell it off at the end of the day or when you leave. And that's how you make your money, when you sell your fish that you keep. So you want to have, when you decide to leave Lone Star, you want to have a larger keep net. Let's take a look. I just want to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. When you finally leave Lone Star Lake and go somewhere else, you want to have something. I would recommend this one right here. It's a level 13. Okay. I would not leave Lone Star Lake until you're at least a level 10 here. I would recommend 13. A level 10, you can get a 33-pound keep net or fish jail here, which is a stringer. But I would wait till level 13 to where you get your 44-pound stringer. Now, let's talk about the difference between stringers and keep nets. Stringers they're not fish friendly. As you can tell, what you do basically is you take this little clip here. You see them all along here. When you catch a fish, you open up that clip and you run it through their gill and through their mouth. So that is what keeps the fish in place and what keeps it from escaping. Can be very painful probably, or at least it can damage fish. And the thing about keep nets in this game, or stringers in this game, is that when you catch a fish, you cannot release it after it is on a stringer. You have to keep it until you sell it. So when using stringers, make sure that you're keeping fish that you are sure that you absolutely want to keep, because you will not be able to release them later. When this comes into play is when you're getting to the end of your keep net or your stringer here, when you've got it almost filled up, and you catch that nice sized trophy fish you've been trying to catch, and it's worth a lot of money, and you want to put it on your stringer. You can't release any of your other fish off the stringer in order to make room for the trophy you just caught. So keep that in mind. The difference with that with keep nets is that you can release the fish. So if you put a fish, see that it's basically just a mesh cage. You throw the fish in there. It's got a little flap right in here that prevents the fish from escaping. Keep in mind that if you want to be able to release fish after you have put them in your keep net, you can do that with a keep net. Can't do it with a stringer, but you can do it with a keep net. So when you do catch that trophy, you got your keep net all the way full, and you want to make room for that trophy, you'll be able to release other fish that are in your keep net to make room for the new fish that you want to keep. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail about the vests and the compact bags and the tackle boxes. They're pretty simple, guys. I mean, it's just additions that you could bring with you, which will make room for more tackle when you're traveling to different locations. So the more of these little doohickeys you get here, they open up spots in your backpack to where you can add additional tackle, additional line, that kind of thing. Cases. When you can, I would recommend getting at least a triple case. Not necessary at the lower level, but when you start getting into casting rods, you're going to want to have probably at least one float fishing rod, one spinning rod, and one casting rod. And eventually you're going to want to have at least a triple case here. So I hope that was relatively self-explanatory. Let's go to terminal tackle. Terminal tackle is hooks and bobbers, right? This is what you use when you go float fishing. So here is something to keep in mind for guys who are not anglers and they're not really aware with how hooks work. Let's get right into it. A number 10 hook is the smallest hook that you can get in the game. Number 10 is small. So if you're fishing for little panfish, little bluegills, little common shiners, those kind of things, number 10, number 8, number 6, those are all smaller hooks. Now it goes in a descending order, right? Number 10 is the smallest hook. Number 8 is a bit larger than 10. Number 6 is a bit larger than 8. Number 4 is a bit larger than 6. Number 2, so forth and so on. So a number 2 hook is much larger than a number 10 hook. So a number 2 you'd want to use for larger panfish, maybe even some 1 pound bass that might be out there, fish that have larger mouths that they can open up to swallow a hook that is larger. That's what you want to keep in mind. It goes, when you're in these number sizes here, it goes in a descending order. Number 10 smallest, number 2 the largest, or they might even have number 1s. Yeah, number 1 is the largest of that nature. But then you'll notice something different here, is that it goes from a number 1 to a number 1/O. What does that mean? That stands, that would be a number 1/0 hook. 1/0 hooks are larger than number 1 hooks. Okay? So a number 1 odd is larger than a number 1. A number 1 odd is larger than a number 2. Number 1 odd larger than number 4, so forth and so on. It goes from 10 to 1, and then 1 odd all the way up to, I believe, 10 odd in the game. So when you get into the odd sizes, you've got a 2 odd. Now a number 2 odd is larger than a number 1 odd. You guys are getting the drift, right? Number 3 odd is bigger than a number 2 odd. So forth and so on, all the way up. Number 5 odd bigger than a number 4. So keep that in mind. Number 10 hook to number 1 hook, it goes 10 smallest, number 1 biggest. Once you get into the odd sizes, then number 1 odd is the smallest. Number 10 odd would be the largest, and odd sizes, the odd sizes are always larger than the ones that aren't odd sizes, the ones that are just number 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth and so on. Hope you guys understand that there. It's very important when you get into catching larger fish and different types of fish, the size of the hook is very important. For example, if you're fishing for, let's say you're fishing for northern pike, and you want to keep young northern pike off your hook, but you want to catch the larger northern pike, you're going to want to use probably like a number 6 odd hook, and that will it'll be too big of a hook for the smaller fish to go after, to swallow. So then you will limit yourself to catching more of the larger fish if that's what you want. Keep in mind that when you use bigger hooks going for the larger fish, there may be some more time that you are not catching fish because you're not letting the little guys on the hook, but you will catch usually bigger fish that pay more money. So keep that in mind. Lures. We could go on for hours about lures, guys. One thing to just keep in mind is that they're very versatile. Casting spoons, jig heads. Jig heads work with soft plastic baits like shads. In addition to what else we got here? You should have some grubs coming up here. The grubs. Okay, what you want to do when you're fishing soft plastics is have a jig head, and then you put the soft plastic on the jig head, and that is how you work those baits. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back. For example, here we've got casting spoons. Casting spoons are going to be one of the first lures that you actually purchase when you're lower level on Lone Star Lake. Casting spoons can be great for the spotted bass out there. You guys probably keep hearing me mention spotted bass. If you're a newcomer to the game, they are the best money-making fish on Lone Star Lake. They're the ones that you're going to make the most money on. So, casting spoons, my recommendation would be to buy casting spoons when you can afford them at the 1/3 ounce is good, but at the 4th ounce level here, guys. 4th ounce, when you're a level 5 and a level 6, when you're level 5, you will unlock this red and white spoon and this yellow and red diamond spoon. These are going to be your two go-to lures for the spotted bass, and they work for many other fish too. Pike, pickerel. They're an all around. Even some panfish will sometimes hit them. But this one here, this gold one, and the silver one, these are the first 4 lures that you're probably going to want to purchase when you're starting off and you get into casting. You want to get these guys here. Actually, I've had the best luck, not only on Lone Star, but on other lakes as well, with the red and white casting spoon and the yellow with red diamond casting spoon. They work wonders for different types of fish, larger fish than the panfish. And yep, you'll want to go ahead and buy those. Now, there's different ways to work them when you're fishing, but I've got videos on that to show you which retrieval methods to use. You can check them out on my channel. I got a ton of Fishing Planet videos regarding how to fish different lures for different types of fish. Now, if you want to get jig heads, you can do that too. Jig heads, like I was saying earlier, you combine them with some kind of soft plastic, either a grub or a shad or a worm or whatever. There's various other types of lures. Now, narrow spoons I'll get into later. Let's go to spinners. Spinners are good. Nano spinners are good for all kinds of panfish and bass. I'll get into all these later, just to give you an idea what is out there. But the first lures starting off are these four right here in this little boxy kind of area that I'm highlighting here. These are the guys you want to get starting off on Lone Star. So let's move up to something else here. Bass jigs, right? You can get bass jigs too. These bass jigs are good. A 1/3 ounce bass jig is good for the bass. Go figure. On Lone Star Lake, you can nab one of these watermelon colors here at a 1/3 ounce, and you should be good to go to catch those fish. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean? Let's go back to the shop. What does it mean when you have the weights? So pretty much what we have here is a 1/6 ounce, which is a very small jig head, and it's only got a number 2 hook on it. So some jig head of this size would probably be good for panfish and maybe some small bass. Now let's see what you'd want if you want to go after the bigger fish, and if you were to have them unlocked, you start getting into bigger jig heads, right? So you got a 1/2 ounce here, which is a decent sized jig head. You've got a 1 5/7 ounce here, which is a pretty big jig head, very heavy. And it's got a number 4 odd hook. So it's got a decent sized hook on it too. This is the type of jig head you would use for larger bass and big northern pikes and bigger fish in general. That is the type of jig head you would use with a number 4 odd hook to catch larger fish. So let's move on to, let's see what else we got here in the shop. Baits, common baits and insect baits and worms, fresh baits. This is where you guys are going to be starting off with, because you start off with a telescopic rod. So let's take a look at the different baits that we have here. Going over it real quick, you're going to start off with bread is what they give you. As soon as you can, you're going to want to buy some red worms and start fishing for panfish. Once you start building up a little bit of a bankroll and get a hang of it with panfish, the bluegills, the crappies, and the red ear sunfish, common shiners, things of that nature, you'll start moving up the chain. You'll start unlocking better baits. Now, cheese and pet food are both good for catfish. One thing I want to tell you guys in the game, a lot of people want to catch catfish right off the bat for some reason. A lot of catfishermen out there. You can do that, but keep in mind that catfish are not the best paying fish. Catfish are generally low paying. They just don't give you the money and XP that you really want to if you're looking to move up levels quickly. Starting off on Lone Star, you're going to want to fish bass. So once you get to level 4, you'll be able to unlock grasshoppers. I have fished grasshoppers on Lone Star Lake and caught plenty of spotted bass with them. It's a good way, float fishing, to catch the spotted bass there to start earning you some money and XP relatively quickly. Small cut bait, shiners. The small cut bait you won't really have to worry about on Lone Star. Shiners, I do not recommend getting them. They cost 7 gold, and you only get 10 of them. Once you run out of shiners, you've burned through that 7 gold. You'll never get it back. So don't buy the shiners, but we do have small minnows here, guys. Now, small minnows at level 7, you unlock for float fishing, and they are good. They're great for crappie, and there's plenty of crappie on Lone Star Lake. Great for crappie, and you will catch also the bass on them, the spotted bass on Lone Star Lake. You'll be able to catch for small minnows. You'll find small minnows to be a very effective bait throughout the game. So that's what you want to worry about on Lone Star. Float fishing, you want to get to the point where you can unlock small minnows, grasshoppers first, then small minnows, so you can start fishing for the spotted bass on Lone Star Lake. Licenses, I don't think I need to touch on that. Hopefully you guys get it. This is how much basic licenses cost. You never want to get just a basic license on any lake that you fish. You always want to spend that extra money and get the advanced license. Trust me, it may seem expensive at times, but it will definitely pay off in the long run. So let's go to some beginner tips here. Beginner tips regarding, let me see if I can go through my checklist. I'm doing this video off of memory without a script, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm trying to remember now things that to keep in mind. When you're starting off, don't spend your money frivolously. Keep it because you're gonna want it. You're gonna start off fishing panfish on Lone Star, and then you're gonna want to start fishing the spotted bass there. They're the best money makers there. Okay, lakes. You start unlocking lakes, right? The second lake, or actually the first lake that you'll unlock, but the second one that's available in game is Mudwater River. Now, let me tell you guys, Mudwater River can be a good river, good place to fish if you know what you're doing. There's plenty of catfish in there. There's even some largemouth bass in there. The main money maker for me, I've noticed on Mudwater River, are the grass and chain pickerels here. But anyways, if your goal, and which is what your goal starting off should be, to get XP and to get money. Money is very important because it's going to get you to the other places. XP is going to get you to unlock equipment and lures and lines and stuff like that you're going to need to fish the bigger fish. I would not recommend going to Mudwater River as your second destination. You can try it. Don't say I didn't told you, but it's a very difficult river to fish if you're a newcomer to the game. I would wait until you unlock Emerald Lake here. Emerald Lake is a wonderful lake. You unlock it at level 5, but I wouldn't travel to it until you're at least level 13. Emerald Lake is a great lake to make money on, especially when you are a newcomer to the game. Look at me, I'm a level 37, found myself with negative money, and I fish Emerald Lake all the time when I'm low on money and I need to build my bankroll back up. And this is the lake to do it. I've got videos on how to fish Emerald Lake to make money. You guys can check those out. But for the beginner guide, I would skip Mudwater River first and go to Emerald Lake at about level 10, maybe level 10, but more aptly about level 13, and start fishing for walleye out here. You guys will notice a big difference in the amount of money that you're earning compared to Lone Star Lake. And it's a lot easier to fish than Mudwater River is. Just a better all-around selection of fish. So let's talk about travel here for a second. If you're traveling to any destination, you're going to notice that you have the travel fee. Okay, the travel fee and what it's going to cost for you to stay there. Actually, let's rewind a little bit here. Let's look at it here. Your travel cost is $1,850. Your 1 day stay is $500, resulting to a total of $2,350 to get there and be able to fish, or not be able to fish, to get there and be able to stay there. In addition to that, which I've already purchased one because obviously I'm farming fish there to get back on track there. The advanced license, you're going to want to take that into consideration too. The advanced license, actually, for New York, it's not saying it here because I already own it, but the advanced license for 1 day in New York is $600. So before you travel to any lake, you want to make sure a few things. You want to make sure you have enough to get there and have an advanced license. So here we have $2,350. The advanced license is $600. So overall, it's going to cost you $2,950 to get to Emerald Lake, stay there for a day, and be able to fish and keep all the fish that you catch there. Another thing to take into consideration when traveling is that you probably want to have enough money to stay for more than just 1 day when you're on Emerald Lake. As a matter of fact, the thing to consider, the main thing to consider, you do not want to, your goal when you're going to a lake to keep your head above water financially is to, at the bare minimum, make back on that lake the amount of money that it costs you to get there. So if it costs you $2,950, which would cost in this instance going to Emerald Lake, you want to make sure you make at least, while you're fishing there, you want to make at least $2,950. That will cover your expenses to get there, and it'll cover your travel, it'll cover your first day stay, it'll cover your advanced license. Now, you may also want to bring more money with you when you go to a lake, a different lake other than Lone Star. you may want to bring with you a little bit extra money. So let's look at this. It costs $500 a day to stay at Emerald Lake. So we traveled there for $1,850. We got the advanced license for $600, $500 a day. So that first day that you fish there, when you're done fishing, it'll go ahead and it'll tally up all the fish that you have in your keep net, and it'll pay you out accordingly for that. So you might not, your first day, you might not make enough to cover how much you spent to get to Emerald Lake, or any lake for that matter. Your first day, you might not catch enough fish to cover that, but you want to have enough so that you can stay another day. So in this instance, it would cost $500. Let's say for a 3-day trip to Emerald Lake. Before you go to Emerald Lake, you'd probably want to have at least $3,950 before going to Emerald Lake. You'd want to have at least that in your bank account. That'll cover travel, the basic or the advanced license. I'm sorry, the advanced license, and it'll also cover 2 more days worth of fishing on Emerald Lake. Now, I do not like to leave a lake until I make a profit of some sort, at least at the bare minimum. I like to stay on a lake until I've earned a pretty good amount of profit on it before I leave. Yeah, so let's touch on that a little bit. Let's touch on the advanced licenses or basic licenses. I don't see why you'd get a basic license. I advise you never to get them. Just go for the advanced license. But the advanced licenses are in real time. They're not in Fishing Planet time. They're in real life time. So if you buy a license, like let's see here, I bought one yesterday on November 17th, and I bought it at 10:36 p.m. This license will be good for me until later today, which is the 17th, right? Or maybe that's when it expires. Maybe that's when it expires. At any rate, it's good for, if you buy a 1-day license, it's good for 24 hours real time. So I bought this license. I bought it yesterday, so I guess this must be the expiration time. I bought it yesterday at about 10:36 p.m., which was the 16th. So this license will be good for me for 24 real-time hours, not in-game time. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. You buy the license, and if you got to go somewhere, you got to stop the game or leave the game for a little bit. These licenses are good in real life time. So keep that in mind. It's not Fishing Planet time. If you buy a license and you got to fast forward to the next day because you caught all your fish or you're out of peak fishing time or whatever, your license will not necessarily expire because it's not 24 hours game time, 24 hours for 1 day license, real time, real life time, guys. Keep that in mind as well. So I think I've covered pretty much that. Oh yeah, and again, I want to stress it. The main arsenal in your inventory when going to any lake is your keep net. So I want to go over it one more time. Your keep net or your stringer. Keep nets here, you always want to have the largest keep net or stringer that you can afford at your level when traveling, right? So if you are, when you're about ready to go to New York, you're about ready to go ahead and catch those walleye that are out there, start earning some real money in Fishing Planet. You'll want to have, if you're fishing a well, actually, let's just go ahead and go to all of them in general. You're gonna want to have at least a bare minimum the 10-pounder, which is a 33-pound stringer. I recommend not going to New York until you can get the 44-pound stringer, which is available at level 13. Now let's talk about how this works, right? So you go to a lake, you start fishing, you start putting fish either in your keep net or on your stringer, and then you fill it up, right? You fill it up to the point to where it can no longer hold any more fish. A, you always want to fish until you fill your stringer up at any destination, if you can. And B, once you reach your stringer being full, you don't necessarily want to leave the lake. Never leave the lake unless you're positive you don't want to fish there anymore. What you can do in game, let's see if I can show this to you guys who are new here real quick. what you can do in game, we'll go ahead and we'll travel to the Lone Star real quick. Let's go ahead and travel there. Come on, computer, you can do it. Okay, when you get to a lake, and I'm just using Lone Star as an example because that's where I'm at. Once you fill up your stringer or keep net, the last thing you want to do, or more importantly, the thing you do not want to do, you do not, I wish I had a big red X, I'd put it over. Do not click leave. You don't want to click leave unless you're absolutely sure you are ready to leave that lake. What you can do to get the money for the fish that you've earned is you want to hit your T key on your keyboard. Okay. And then it'll say fast forward time. Now, once your keep net or your stringer is full, regardless of the time of day or night, once it's full, you're sure you want to cash in all your fish because you won't get the money for the fish until you cash them out. All you have to do is fast forward time here till 5 o'clock, not PM, but 5 o'clock. Or I guess it's going to say one day here. One day, 5 o'clock AM, whatever. You want to be at least 5 o'clock AM of the next day. What that'll do, when you fast forward time to the next day, 5 o'clock AM the least, what happens is that your fish, your stringer or your keep net will cash out, and you'll get all the money that you earned for those fish without leaving the lake. Very important, guys. Very important, because you'll go broke. You'll go broke if you leave the lake and come back every time your stringer is full. That's why I recommend getting the biggest stringer that you can, A, to fill up when you're on a lake, and B, to use this method. Fast forward to the next day, bare minimum 5 o'clock. It'll cash out your keep net. It'll empty it out all the way. And the only thing that you'll have to pay is the fee to fish for another day on the lake. So if you're in New York, once you cash out the fee to fish a day there is $500. You'll cash out your keep net. You'll make all your profit from it. And the only thing that you'll have to pay is that $500 to fish on New York for another day, rather than having to go through the rigmarole of spending another $2,350. You only have to invest $500. Big help. You're going to want to do this quite a bit when you go different lakes. You're never going to want to leave. Never leave unless you're absolutely sure that you are ready to leave. You don't have to leave to cash out the fish. Fast forward to the next day, at least 5 AM. You'll cash out, you'll get the money, and it'll be cheaper, much cheaper, to just spend that money on an extra day of fishing rather than leaving and coming back. Okay, guys, those are the basic tips that I can think of to get you started in Fishing Planet. Again, this guide was aimed at people who are very, very new to the game, not sure what they're doing. I'm not going to go through which rods and reels are good for that. I'm going to let you figure that out for yourself using the method, what I taught you at the beginning of the video, matching up your reels to your rods according to the fish that you're fishing. You always, okay, we can do that. That is what I want to show you. So how do you know what rod or reel to get for a specific fish? Well, the best way to do it is to go here to the leaderboard. First, determine which lake you want to fish on. So we'll go ahead and say, let's say New York. Let's say New York. So we'll go to fish. We'll go to, say you want to catch walleye while you're in New York. We'll go to others here, or maybe perch. Is perch there? Yeah, perch. We'll go to perch, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go to Emerald Lake, which is in New York. And here we go. So the biggest fish so far, take a look at the leaderboards. The absolute biggest fish that has been caught on New York recently was a 7-pounder. Okay, so keep in mind that you're not going to pull out a 7-pounder most likely, but you're more likely to pull out walleye that are more in the 2 to 3 pound range. But of course, these are the leaderboards here. But the best rule of thumb that I usually use is make sure that I have a rod and reel setup that can handle the biggest fish of the type of fish that I'm catching on any particular lake. So in this instance, you'd want a rod and reel setup, probably a rod and reel that can handle 8-pound line. And you want to be able to handle, you want to have a rod and reel setup for 8-pound line That'll be able to handle any kind of fish of walleye. Saugers are a form of walleye. Perch, walleye, saugers are all in the same family. They get as big as 7 pounds, it looks like in here. Anyway, you're going to want to have a rig at least maybe 7.5, 8 pounds. A rod and reel setup that can handle 8-pound test line will get you going to here, and that'll be able to get you going to Emerald Lake, and you'll be able to fish and catch if you happen to run in the biggest fish of the perch distinction, walleye distinction, sauger distinction here in Emerald Lake, you'll be able to handle it with ease. So let's go another example here, right? Let's go to the Everglades and let's go to bass. Okay. The biggest bass that was caught on Emerald Lake was 13.690 pounds. So I know before I go to the Everglades, I know that there is a chance that I might catch a fish that large. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to make sure I have a rod and reel setup and the line that can handle a fish that gets about 13.69 pounds. So I'm going to want a setup probably more in the 14 to 16 range, something that can handle, just in case, something that can handle fish that is at least 13.69 pounds. So keep that in mind. That's how you want to select your rods and reels. Depending on what fish you're going for, look at what type of fish you're going for, how big they get, and then bring or purchase a rod and reel setup that can handle a fish of that size. You shouldn't run into any issues then catching those fish. Now, there's one thing to keep in mind when you're fishing. Sometimes you may notice that the experience, when the little pop-up comes up, you caught a fish, the little pop-up, it tells you how much XP you got, how much money you got, how big the fish was, all that good stuff. Sometimes by your XP, you'll notice some red arrows. Sometimes you'll see 1 red arrow, sometimes you'll see 2, sometimes you'll see 3. The reason why you're getting these red arrows by your XP is because somewhere your equipment is just too big for the fish that you're trying to catch. So I'll put it in real simple terms. If you're fishing for bluegill that are under a pound, you don't want to use a rod and reel setup in line that is 30 pound. Okay. That is way too big for the fish. And that is the reason why you're getting those little red arrows. Those little red arrows, you don't lose XP, but you get less XP for catching fish that are smaller than what your equipment is meant to fish for. We'll put it that way. All right, I think that's about it, guys. Right now, I covered pretty much everything I can really think of. I'm not really missing anything. If you guys need any more clarification on things, go ahead and drop a comment in the comment section of this video. Ask the question, and I'll do my best to explain it to you guys. I think this, like I said, this is a real bare bones guide that I just kind of threw together at a whim here, going off the top of my head. But yeah, if there's anything else you would like explained, like I said, leave it in the comment section below. I'll go ahead and do my best to get to it and answer it. Now, I'm not going to teach you or explain how to catch specific fish or anything like that. I do have videos for all of that on my channel. You can go to those videos. I have videos for Lone Star Lake in Texas. I have videos for Mudwater River in Missouri. I have videos for Emerald Lake in New York, videos for Near End River in North Carolina, videos for Rocky Lake in Colorado, videos for Falcon Lake in Oregon, and I just recently released two videos for the Everglades in Florida. I'm going to be doing that, more Florida videos in the future. So yeah, hope this helped you guys, or at least gave you a little bit more understanding if you're new to the game and can't figure it out. Drop questions in the comment section below, guys. I'm going to go ahead and conclude this episode here. You guys know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, shoot that like button. If you're new to Jake Vegas Digital and want to stay up to date on future content, please subscribe. I'm Jake Vegas. Thanks for watching. Keep on fishing in the free world, and we will see you next time.